well, we approve it in the beginning, don't we?
I also am dying to hear about the North Carolina trip, but I think it's something that you're only going to be able to tell us all now in the agendas or an agendized something.
Okay. The March 1st meeting of the Mountain View Westman School District Trustees is called to order at 6:01 PM. Trustees, will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ladies over here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now we have roll call. Trustees, will you please state your name for the record?
Jose Gutierrez Jr.
Helen Wheeler,
Tamara Wilson.
Greg Coladonato.
And I'm Laura Blakely. The next item that we have is approval of the agenda, but we have a speaker wishing to speak on this item. Will you please come forward? Do you need more than 2 minutes for this? Thank you. State your name for the record.
My name is Stephen Nelson. I wanted to compliment the president and the board for the agenda on the closed session. It's wonderful that when you put in this agenda, you're negotiating. And you actually put description of what you're negotiating on. Even though this doesn't use what's called the safe harbor language, and many districts use, quoting what exemption you're expecting from the open agenda. I'm sure good old Ralph Van Brown would be quite happy with what you described as what you're negotiating. And now we know you're negotiating with a mixture of Google in the city and some property owners, and we have the real estate lawyer right here. So thank you for following the rules that the state of California has set up more than the last 50 years. For explaining when you go into closed section, exactly what part of the exemption you're asking for.
Thank you. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
so moved.
I have a question to ask. Item 9, at our retreat, we talked about how to set the agenda up. My recollection was that action came first, that items on which staff was seeking input is the next most pressing matter, and that updates for information were third of the 3. And if anything needed to be cut from the agenda, that the updates, by being last, would naturally be bumped.
That's my recollection as well.
That means like swapping 9 and 10 is what I would propose we approve.
Can I make a request though, because this is the agenda that was printed, and if people want to come for an item, they'd be following this agenda, that we keep the agenda items as they are printed, and then in the future, make sure that we utilize the format that you're describing.
And I'd just like to make a comment, given the fact that the break happened normally, I would have met with Superintendent Rudolph the Tuesday of the break week, and we would have fine-tuned the agenda, but because of the break and travel schedules, this was a little rushed and not as considered. So I'm happy to, and I'm sure the superintendent would agree that in the future we'll be more sensitive to that.
Okay.
So,
Second.
Okay.
okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, on a motion made by Trustee Wheeler and seconded by Trustee Gutierrez, the agenda is approved unanimously. Did I get that wrong?
Yes.
Greg,
Greg,
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I
I'm
was, I was over home plate
only
by the
wrote
time he was
something
turning
else.
third.
Tie, tie ball. So the motion was made by trustee Wheeler and seconded by trustee Coladonato. Thank you for keeping me honest here. Now is the time for an opportunity for members of the public to address the board concerning items on the closed session agenda. And I believe we have one speaker who wishes to so comment. I think you already distributed this. Oh, something different. Okay, thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Aren't we all supposed to receive a
I think it's the same thing.
I'll pass it along. I think it's a voice article that maybe most of us have already
It's the
seen.
voice from Plastic. Good evening, the Cupertino School District had a former superintendent that they evaluated. Comment on item evaluation. That former superintendent now heads a one-school district. Communication. Failed that. Former president of the California School Boards Association, former president of the Cupertino School Board, former trustee Lucy also lost her position at the hands of the elected. Came in fourth of four. That dead horse, Ms. Blakely? Yeah. But bury those bones. Bury the bones of non-communication. Bury the bones of non-participation. Bury the bones by your evaluation. Your evaluation of the situation needs to bring communication to its culmination. 5-year goals, those are just pretty words on a paper 5-year plan. They don't come with action.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. And at 6:07 PM, the meeting is adjourned to closed session.
pleased that we're back in at 7:30.
Okay. It's 7:40 PM. The March 1st meeting of the Mountain View Wisman School District trustees is returning to order from closed session. And I have a couple items to report out from closed session. The first is that the board asked district staff to explore with the city swapping property, including the Cooper site or portions of that site for city-owned property. And then the next item is release and reassignment of 3 certificated administrators. Upon the motion of trustee Caladonato, seconded by trustee Wilson, and a vote of 5-0 as required by the Education Code, section 44951, 3 certificated administrators will be given notice of release from their current administrative positions for the following school year. Written notice shall be provided to each prior to March 15th, 2018. The superintendent or designee shall notify each of their specific assignment for the following school year, 2018-19, by June 30th, 2018. And the ayes were trustees Caladonato, Gutierrez, Wheeler, Wilson, and Blakely. There were no nays, no one abstained, and no one was absent. Thank you. Okay, and now we move on to the consent agenda. The following items will be handled with one action. However, any item may be removed from consideration by individual board members or the superintendent. The personnel report.
What?
Wait, what am I looking at the wrong thing?
I move that
Sorry.
we approve the consent
May I
agenda as
please have a vote
presented.
on the consent agenda?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. On a motion made by trustee Gutierrez and seconded by trustee Wheeler, the consent agenda was approved unanimously. The next item is communications. Are there any members of employee organizations here that wish to report this evening? Any members of district committees here that would wish to make a report this evening? Superintendent Rudolph, do you have a report for us?
I do. We know that over the past couple of weeks, it's been pretty tough for everyone in the nation, and our hearts go out to Parkland. And so in response to that, our district will be setting up a town hall to discuss safety, mental health, violence prevention, as well as guns. In this town hall, we'll start off first with understanding what we want to do or what people are looking for in terms of sort of action steps through a thought exchange process. And then after that, the town hall, right now we've put our invitations out and we've had at least a couple people accept. The hospital will be joining us as part of the town hall. MVPD will be joining us as part of the town hall. We will have the YMCA will also be will be joining us, and we've sent out invitations to CHAC, our teachers union president, as well as the fire department, so that we can have an open dialogue and discussion about how do we keep our kids safe, and sort of what role does the community play in this, and knowing that there is no one solution to it, but obviously we want to make sure that everyone from the schools to the police department are taking proactive steps to assure that the 5,200 kids at least in our school district, but we hope that this will spur momentum to the 5,200 that are in the high school district, as well as the 5,200 that are at Los Altos, and even further than that, but at least spur a conversation about what we can do collectively to keep our kids safe. So we have 2 dates that are set in April. We will be sending out more information as soon as we get a confirmation from our other partners about what our next steps are.
Thank you. Trustees, any questions or comments about that? Okay. So now's the time for community comments. This is the time reserved for community members to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board and administration welcome this opportunity to listen. However, in compliance with the Brown Act, the board is not permitted to take action on non-agenda items. Speakers are requested to complete a speaker card and state their name for the record. And if there are additional comments after 10 minutes have elapsed, we may continue this item after action and discussion items are completed. I have 5 cards here. These are all for, I believe, for items not on the agenda. Is that correct? We have 5 cards here, so I would ask that each speaker use 2 minutes. And I think Ms. Liga will be timing everybody. And I'll stay in the order so that you guys can line up. Richard Wojtek, Hugh McLaughlin, Jamie Seba, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing anybody's names, Anna Silverman, and Shauna Reisowitz. So please state your name for the record when you commence your comments.
Thank you. I'm Richard Wojtek. I'm a resident here in Mountain View. Good evening, members of the Board of Trustees. My name, as I said, is Richard Wojtek. I've been a resident here in the district for approximately 30 years. My son Andrew attended Graham Middle School back in 2010. Before you tonight, dispel a few notions that may have been implied in a recent Mountain View Voice article regarding the last board meeting back here. First, St. Cooper Park members overwhelmingly support efforts to attract and retain quality teachers and classified persons. Your partners, not the enemy. We recognize the very high cost of housing for even mid-income employees. We all suffer through that issue as well. It is accurate that growing numbers of residents are against the idea of eliminating open space. Very possible outcome of the proposal presented by PCG Strategy. Now the website has already received over 2,000 hits, petitions that have been signed by hundreds of supporters, and yard signs that are cropping up throughout the area to save Cooper Park. This is not a welcome change, despite the admirable intentions. We want to make sure that everyone understands the proposal calls for the loss of both of the baseball fields, the open space used for soccer fields, and the current preschool on the site of the Cooper School. Remaining would be playground, tennis courts, and small green patch in Cooper Park. We believe the proposal presented by PCG Strategies on January 18th raises many concerns. Planning calls for a sale of land, fund project which we believe is unrealistic, due to the expected growth in enrollment in the district. Once sold, this land is no longer available for a future school site. Site once housed K through 2nd grade. Today's land in question is utilized by neighborhood and city residents as well as those from neighboring towns. Organized baseball, softball, and soccer teams practice and play there. The Boy Scouts have utilized the space and completed development projects there. The area is used for its walking path and garden. This will all be lost.
Thank you, Mr. Wojtek.
Okay? Never been to a board meeting. I think I'm just trying to give you an impression. Trying to find the right word, but this is very important part of the activity. On the development side, tell my wife. I love it. So, yeah, that's the, I think that.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. That's fine. fine, thanks.
So I'm here also about the school partnership. Thank you so much for hearing us today. We really appreciate it. My husband and I, children that we raised here in Mountain View, through Mountain View, is all in their 20s and 30s now. They all went to graduate school. 2 of them were doctors. You guys did a great job in school. Wonderful. I am also a teacher. I used to be a teacher before, but now. Anyway, my husband and I use Cooper Park on a daily basis. On the weekends, I referee soccer at the park, 2 or 3 games a weekend. This is community property that you are trying to take away from the community. Not to mention all of that that's already been said. We live in a spot where it's so impacted by traffic. In front of our house, we have a line of cars going to Mountain View High, and then a line of cars coming from Mountain View High. And Grant Road is impassable. Morning, noon, after school, and in the evenings. We don't have room for people. It's just that simple. We are getting squeezed out of our homes. So many of my neighbors have sold their homes and moved to Arizona just because they don't want to be so squished. And you want to put another high-rise condo townhouse right in the middle of our neighborhood. Please don't. We just can't take any more impact. As it is, El Camino has new high-rises and apartments up and down. How much more can this little city take? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Silverman. Yeah. Ms. Seba? Or Seba, I'm sorry if I'm,
Thank you, Sita.
okay.
Thank you for listening to us today. As a former public school teacher and a current parent in the district, I'm very glad to see the district working to meet the needs of our community. For example, recently I heard about the new elementary school that's opening soon. That will be at 220 North Lisbon. I've also learned the district is making preschool accessible to more families, as well as opening a full day preschool in the near future. And I truly appreciate all that you do to care for these students in our community. Yet in light of these expansions, it's confusing to me that the district would be eliminating the independent study program. The program is successfully educating its participants, spends less than $4,000 per student. Enrollment has been full, and in fact, there's a waiting list. And it totally embraces the mission and vision of this district. Parent involvement is high, and our diverse students treat each other with kindness and respect. ISP is unique, and there are no other programs just like it available to me. Why close this strong, efficient, effective school if you're able to open and expand other schools? I think you can be proud of meeting our city's needs and by opening the other schools and significantly expanding the preschool options, and by continuing to provide the independent city program. Please consider keeping our district safe. Very much.
Thank you, Ms. Seba. Shauna Bresovitz.
Hello, I'm Shauna Reiswitz. I came last time and spoke with you a little. I'm the teacher in the homeschool program. I've been involved in homeschool education since 2002, and mostly, actually ever since I have been involved in it, I've been in the public school. Homeschooling and public schooling are not opposites. Homeschooling is I think it's important in the public system, and I'm a deep believer that the public system supports all children, and children come to homeschooling for a variety of reasons. The 2 broad reasons that I think of are the peak homeschoolers and the people and the children that we need to almost rescue out of the classroom because they're just not thriving. And I think that I'm very, very happy that this district, and I think the district should be really proud that it's offered a homeschool program for its children who have not been thriving in the classroom, because it's the way that we reach all children. We have many, many stories of children who were sad, crying, stomach aches, can't go to school anymore, and they come to our program and now they love it. They love school. And it is a school. So I wanted to make that point, and I also wanted to make another point that, another point is that it's very difficult to homeschool alone. Just to close down this program, yes, there are options, but no options offer the kind of community that this program offers, where the mothers and the fathers can talk to each other on a regular basis. The children have a group that they love and call their own school. They go on field trips together, and they do Valentine's Day parties, and they have a group that they love, that they identify with. And I also just want to make the final point is that our program has not, in the years that I've been here since 2013, been in declining enrollment. It's been at 15 students every year I've been here, except for this year. But this year there was a waiting list that was not allowed into the program.
Thank you, Ms. Reisowitz.
And it goes up to usually 18 because the kids are failing out.
Thank you.
President Blakely, you read a motion or an action that was taken in closed session, and I think a lot of the people in the audience didn't understand what you were saying. So I request that you read that
The
that
first
action
one?
again, the first one, yes?
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. So during closed session, the board asked district staff to explore with the city of Mountain View swapping property, including the Cooper site or portions of that site for city-owned property.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Of course. Okay, now we're moving on to the review and action portion of the meeting. And the first item is reopeners for negotiations between the Mountain View Wisconsin School District and the Mountain View Educators Association and public hearing.
Good evening, trustees. I'd like to introduce to you Colin Dector, who is the Mountain View Education Association Vice President. And I are going to be presenting our proposals for sunshine for this coming negotiations. We did, according to 3547, we must have a public hearing.
Oh, okay, so at 7:57, the public hearing on this item is opened.
What we would like to do is present the district items, which would be 3 articles in the collective bargaining agreement. Ours, Article 3, reassignments, transfers, and vacancies, Article 4, and compensation benefits, Article 5. There are items for negotiation that we propose. The director will provide NDEAs.
Our association has an interest in promoting an amicable, open, and collaborative. And as the last few years, we've towards a competitive amongst California. We respectfully sunshine to the community the following articles. Article 3, hours, the purpose of maintaining employee well-being. Article 5, salary and benefits, and retaining the highest quality of providing the best possible and benefits package. Article 7, class size, supporting higher academic achievement, ensuring student success, and narrowing the academic. The NBA wishes to negotiate articles.
Thank you, Mr. Dector. I'm not sure what's supposed to happen next with public hearing. Do we go to community comments and then? Okay, are there any community members that wish to speak on this item? Trustees? Any? Okay, thank you. I haven't done a public hearing before. It's 7:59. The public hearing portion regarding the MVEA contract and reopeners for negotiations is closed. Okay.
So this time we are recommending the board negotiation.
Any comments or questions, trustees, or can I have a motion if not? Were there any community members that wanted to make a comment? Okay.
I move that the board approve the articles for reopening negotiations for the 2018-2019 school year between the Mountain View Wisdom School District and the Mountain View Education Association.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, and a motion made by trustee Gutierrez and seconded by trustee Caladonato. The reopeners for negotiations between the school district and the MVEA was approved unanimously. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dector. The next item is the full day preschool pilot and fee schedule.
Staff just wants to point out that although we normally do one meeting for review and discussion or updates, and then the next meeting will be action, because of timing, we're requesting that this one be moved directly to review and action.
The full day preschool.
The full day preschool, to make sure that we can get the fee schedules out and that our team can go ahead and start opening up spaces and get enrollment going for it. We feel like waiting an additional 2 weeks could be at a detriment to some families.
Thank you. And we have Terry Wallace, our preschool director, presenting on this topic.
Providing access to high quality education programs to all the children. In order to make early education possible, requires that we devise creative solutions programs to meet the very family. And I'm here to share an early education option for our school district college strength, our families, opportunities for our parents, pursue career and educational goals, and both developmental and elementary requirements. Currently, we have a total of 204 partners. Of those 224 spaces, funded in the remaining impacted our enrollment this year. With a rapid increase in the number of spaces available over the last 2 years due to additional funding, which has allowed us to eliminate the waiting list for eligible state preschool students the first time in over a decade. We had a dozen families on the waiting list through the fall this year for state preschool space because they were not eligible until the St. Clair County Healthcare Subsidy pilot was approved in January. That was originally expected. Additionally, this year there has been a frequent turnover of students, and so far we've got 24 families out of the area, and 4 have moved to programs with full day options. Between new applicants, turnover, and the child care subsidy pilot approval, we have been consistently enrolling students at the beginning.
Ms. Wallace, can we ask you to move a little closer to the microphone, please? Or the other way around. Thank you.
With frequent student turnover and the financial challenges we know that many of our families are facing, I took a survey to better understand their preschool. Allowed us to determine the program modifications that would be both feasible for us to offer and best support our students and their families. Vast majority of parents were interested in a full day program, which would, in their own words, give their children more time to learn valuable skills, allow the parents to look for jobs, increase their work hours, or continue their own education. While there appears to be significant demand for full day preschool, facilitating such a program comes with both opportunities and challenges. A longer school day means more instructional time and better opportunities for our parents, but it also means that we have to work within the constraints of the space and funding that we currently have available to us, as well as our licensing capacity and contract limitations at work. We can provide full day spaces next year, but that will leave us with fewer spots overall and some inequities for our teachers in the number of students per classroom that we will need to address as a result of variations in classroom sizes and programs. However, right now, the opportunities far outweigh the challenges. And as such, we have a plan that allows us to offer 24 full day spaces. Our full day classroom will be housed at Farrakhan, and the remaining 184 part day spaces will be located at both Farrakhan.
meet the needs of both our lower income families and those who are not eligible for free state preschool, we have two fee options. Families who are eligible for free Part D preschool will pay a small fee for the half of their child's school day that is not funded by the state. And families who are not eligible for state preschool will pay a full day fee based on their income. The proposed fees are all below market rate based on an assessment of the publicized tuition of several private preschool programs in Mountain View with program hours similar to what we will be offering. This is the proposed fee schedule for 2018-19. The Part B fee structure for fee-based families will remain the same as it was this year, with the exception of deletion of the first tier of the schedule. The first tier became irrelevant with the approval of the child care subsidy pilot, as all of those families moved from fee-based to preschool. The full day fee for state preschool eligible families reflects an amount from our survey that many lower income families indicated they could afford to pay. The full day fees for families that are not eligible for state preschool are simply twice the amount of our Part A fees, but still below the average cost for private programs in Mountain View, offering a similar number of program hours per day. Our program will offer 7 hours. The other programs offer 6 to 6.5 hours for anywhere from 11:50 to 14:50 or more. Changes have been made to our fee agreement to reflect the proposed full day program and to clarify and simplify our payment schedule, due dates, and system of prorating fees. Our next steps in order to begin implementation of a full day program include advertisement and enrollment for fall, which typically begins in March, and to continue to plan for our new facilities and program changes for 2019 school year and beyond. And so at this time, I'm respectfully requesting your approval of the full day plan and fee agreement updates tonight so that we can begin our program.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Trustees, were there any clarifying questions before I open it up for community comment?
Yeah, I have a quick clarifying question on the monthly income for the latter two tiers on the price scheduling. Is that for a family of 4, or is it the number and family specified for that $8,624 per month?
That is, we weren't able to create a simple structure that identified addressable based on numbers of members of family size. So that is
Perfect, thank you.
And I had a question. The reason that a full day program takes away part day spaces is because we run a morning program and an afternoon program, so it utilizes the, okay. And do we run this program in the summer, or is it just during the school year?
just during the school year.
Thank you.
Would we be interested in the summer? Food for thought.
Yeah, food for thought.
Yes.
So, community members, did anybody have any comments that they wanted to make on the preschool program proposal? Okay, trustees, any further comments, or do you want to make a motion? You've got comments, go ahead.
You have a comment? No. Oh, my only comment is, it's on, right? No, it's not on.
Here, you want to use this one?
Mine's dead.
Oh, mine died too. Oh, okay. All right. My only comment I just want to direct to Superintendent Rudolph is I just want to thank you for adhering to the bring it one meeting and then take action the next, except when judgment requires speeding things up and letting us know that that's what's happening. I appreciate that we do it this way. It's a good way.
Any other comments? Trustee Gutierrez, did you have?
I'd like to make a comment, which is I am thrilled that Ms. Wallace has been leading the way on this in our district and in the county. And I'm very happy with our superintendent and our board taking these steps. These are, you know, when they're done easily, it seems like this is an easy thing to do, and it's not an easy thing to do. This is pretty unusual for around the county and around the state. So I want to congratulate you and thank you. And just so glad. A lot of people are watching us and they're very interested in your work, Terry.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I also want to commend you for your creativity and your persistence in marching forward to provide, extend the program to more kids. And last year, I think we took it away from Head Start because it was too restrictive, which also enabled more kids. And I'm also really proud to be part of the district and to have you leading this program. So thank you. So trustees, do we have a motion to approve the proposal?
I move that due to the recent change in the county child care subsidy pilot and the need to begin outreach and enrollment for the 2018-2019 right away, the district asks that the board approve the new fee schedule and changes to the fee agreement as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, on a motion made by trustee Gutierrez and seconded by trustee Coladinato, do I need to restate the motion now? Okay, the motion was approved unanimously. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the contract for architectural services for the Latham Preschool Toilet Addition.
I can stand like this.
You can bend it up. It moves. Ah.
Here, take it. Can you take it out in your hand?
Yeah.
Just relax.
The next item on the agenda is staff's recommending approval of architectural first currently Latham Preschool, which is the Castro Preschool, has 3 preschool classes in operation. One of the preschool classes in Village will be going away this summer to continue that campus having 3 preschool classes. One of the permanent portables will need a toilet. EPA submitted a proposal for having a toilet.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. Clarifying questions, trustees? Community comments? If there's no further questions, can I have a motion to approve the contract for architectural services for the Latham Preschool Toilet Addition?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? On a motion made by trustee Wilson and seconded by trustee Wheeler, the motion was approved unanimously. I think this is you again. Yes, Dr. Clark. So the next item on the agenda is the contract for architectural services for school marquee signs for all schools and sites.
So it's one of the continuing efforts as last year for the logo and the rebranding efforts is to provide a school sign or a marquee that denotes each school as a member of the Mountain View Wisconsin School District. DTA, our architectural firm who's been working in the district, submitted a proposal to provide architectural services for marquee signs at all of our school sites. Some of the signs will actually be digital signage, where 4 lines of digital signage for so we doing messages. And some of the signs themselves will not have that digital component. So the signs that have a digital component will be the elementary schools. Both Crittenden and Graham have a digital marquee already in place. They would be receiving a sign that just doesn't have that digital marquee, that digital section talking board in it. The district office would be also one of those signs without the sign board. And then the preschools, both preschools, Montecito Preschool, which will be located behind the district office on Montecito, and then also the preschool on Latham would have a sign as well. That way, for 6 later to come, would have one of those signs. So all of our school sites, all the district property, all of our sites in operation and buildings would have the same similar signage, but not be with the school district.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. Clarifying questions, trustees? Any members of the community wishing to make a comment on this item? Any comments, trustees? And if not, can I have a motion to approve the architectural services for school marquee signs for all the schools in the district and sites?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, on a motion made by trustee Wilson and seconded by trustee Gutierrez, the motion was unanimously approved. The next one I think is you again, Dr. Clark. It's the award for the leaseback contract for the modernization, I'm sorry, award the leaseback contract for the construction of a new school on the Slater Elementary School campus to Rodan Construction.
So, as the board and the community is aware, we have taken action to reopen, or in this case, construct a new campus on the Slater campus of New Elementary School. Through the actions in the past, the board, last January 2017, adopted a leaseback model for us to for our project. At a recent board meeting, I believe it was December or early January, the board took action to approve using a leaseback delivery method for the Slater construction project. The contractor that we are recommending for the contract, Rodan Construction, as was part of many other construction firms that submitted their paperwork, their proposals. They went through a scoring process, there was an interview, and then that process, in deliberation, we are recommending Rodan for the Slater contract. The very first contract, the whole contract, which of course was part of the board packet itself, but one of the very first things is the pre-construction. So you'll see the financial impact for this section of the contract is pre-construction services, the amount of $50,000. This is not the full contract. When we get out of DSA, the Division of the State Architect process, this spring, Rodan will actually go through the final set of drawings, head to us a guaranteed maximum price that we can go through and negotiate, and then also through a value engineering and a constructability review, we'll look for ways to streamline the cost and the construction processes to most efficient possible.
Thank you, I'm sorry. Thank you, Dr. Clark. Any clarifying questions, trustees? Any members of the public wishing to comment on this item? If the trustees have any comments, please make them. If not, can we have a motion to approve this item?
I had one question.
Thank you.
Dr. Clark, could you recapitulate briefly the difference? What changed between when it was hard to do leasebacks and then there was legislation that made it more clear how to do it or something? What exactly changed?
In 30 seconds or less?
Yeah, one sentence.
Leasebacks were a lease method was used commonly in the state, and there was Fresno that challenged it. In the interest of time, essentially, they were question about favorability and certain contracts and jobs, and they knew somebody, and try to summarize it and speculate too much. But the courts ruled that there were some problems about it, and they wanted to make sure it was. So they released as part of their ruling, there was new guidelines that we had released. So working with our attorney, Bill Henderson, they've gone through and outlined, and that was the instruction the board adopted over a year ago. Their proposals are all put out. They have to go through a scoring process, pretty extensive. There are references that are done in advance. There's an interview, and it really is who is selected. It's not, I'm going to hire my contractor, I'm trying to come do the job. It's at the end of the day, who gets the best.
Okay, thanks for explaining.
Were there any other questions or comments? Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? On a motion made by trustee Caldonato and seconded by trustee Wilson, the motion to award the leaseback contract for the construction of the new school site on the Slater Elementary School campus to Rodan Construction was approved unanimously. Okay, we have Dr. Clark again then on item F, which is awarding the leaseback contract for the modernization of Thayerkoff Elementary School to Coulter Construction.
So we'll take what I said at the last board agenda item, we'll just kind of transfer it to this one. It's all the same, except this was for a leaseback contract for the Thayerkoff Elementary School modernization and our project. We went through that same process. We interviewed all the contractors at the same time, asked them which job or both, which one they prefer, or would they want both. And so through that process, Coulter Construction, construction firm, was the one who was selected. They're the ones who had the highest score for the Thayerkoff project.
them construction services contract in the amount of approximately $30,000.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. Any clarifying questions, trustees? Comments from the community? Further questions or comments, or can we have a motion to approve the contract with Coulter for Therakoff?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? On a motion made by trustee Wheeler and seconded by trustee Gutierrez, the motion to award the lease-back contract for the modernization of Therakoff Elementary School to Coulter Construction was approved unanimously. Thank you, Dr. Clark. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the California School Boards Association Delegate Assembly, and I believe Dr. Rudolph is presenting on this one? Oh, that's what it,
Trustee Wheeler could present on this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
This
Go
this
ahead.
is turned over to you all to select the delegate for the CSBA.
So I'm our school board representative to the Santa Clara County School Boards Association. I've explained this process to the board every single time we do this. It's an annual election, rotating members, and we just got the background information about all of these candidates. So there's 4 spots that are up for election this time. I think next time there's like 7. And there's 6 people who are running. So all 4 of the incumbents are running for reelection, and then 2 people are also running. So a question that always comes up is, what do you know about these people? Who do you recommend? I can say to you that every single person on this list is very qualified. And then the other thing I always say is our complete delegation to CSBA is outstanding and is well known as being an outstanding delegation. So my recommendation to our board is that we vote for the 4 incumbents. And as an aside, I will say that often people who run and don't get it run again when there's an open seat and they have kind of a leg up on the competition, or when there's an appointment that will open up, and I think there's going to be an appointment opening up, then the people who don't win have a leg up too. But so there are other people in the past who have run and didn't get it also. But anyway, my recommendation is that our board vote to approve the 4 incumbents for delegate assembly.
thank you, Ms. Wheeler. Would any member of the public like to comment on this item? Trustees, any comments or questions? Or I guess we need a motion to, did you move already, Ellen?
One question.
Oh.
Trustee Wheeler, is there any term limit on this role?
No.
No. How long do you know how long these people have been on the delegate?
So Jody Muirhead is the person who was selected last time. So she's pretty brand new. She's our current president of Santa Clara County School Boards Association. Cynthia Chang and Frank Beal have been delegates for quite a few years. Joe Mitchner has been a delegate for a few years. And I'll mention that Joe is the chairperson of the CSBA convention program. So he's doing a lot of work for the organization.
And I
Thank
would
you.
also add that his children matriculated from Bub to Graham to Mountain View High. So he's well known in our community. And he was also the chairman or president of Mountain View Little League for many, many years. So he's well known on a number of fronts.
He can tell you what your uniform number was.
I
Really?
first met him on the bleachers at McKelvey, but
Well, I'd like Joe. As far as the rest, I don't really have I'd like to see some new blood in there. So I wouldn't mind just voting for the two that aren't incumbents. That's just my 2 cents worth. And it's just for the sake of ideas being presented from different people. That's about it. Anyone else?
And I will say that I don't like change for change's sake. Frank Beal and Cynthia Chang bring a lot of knowledge and wisdom. Frank's from East San Jose, which brings its own interest in that. And Cynthia Chang is, I think, our only delegate who's over from, Saratoga, Los Gatos, that kind of
I
thing. So,
respectfully agree to
yeah.
disagree. My whole opinion basically, it's not just change for change. Fact of the matter is, and you said yourself a little while ago, no matter whom we select, we're going to have good representation at that level because it's Santa Clara County. And we all love what we do, or else we wouldn't be in this position. We have a passion for education, and it manifests itself either at our board meetings or at events like CSBA in general. So I would just like to have Daniel and Melissa be given our support if it's possible, along with Joe. If it's the will of the board to not have that and just go with a majority vote for the incumbents, so be it. I'm not gonna get upset or, throw a tantrum.
I'm in favor of supporting the incumbents in this particular slate.
I kind of, what did you say, just Frank? Or I'm sorry, just Joe?
Yeah.
Um,
Joe, yeah, just Joe, and then Daniel and Melissa.
So maybe Trustee Wheeler needs to explain something again. So if we send 4 names, how does that affect the overall balloting in the whole election? Is that like we can vote for 4, but we only vote for 1 and then we leave up, let's see,
We get 4 votes.
we get 4 votes. And by voting for 4, it's possible that someone else could end up higher than Joe Missioner. One of the other 3 might end up pushing Joe off the bottom of the list, depending on how all the other districts vote for all the different candidates.
Right, that's why I would like.
If
to
we liked
support
Joe the
for
most,
sure. Yeah.
if you like Joe the most, then voting just for him would give him the best chance of being elected, correct?
But again,
I'm
Ellen
kind of
knows-
partial to that.
But here's the thing, though. Ellen knows these people more than we do. Right? I know them based on interactions from here and there or reading the resumes. I mean, I've bumped into Mr. Beal. I don't know that he would remember me, but I know I've bumped into him before, and I know this with the East Side. I mean, I lived in over by King and Story for a while, so.
Yeah, Trustee Missioner would be my first choice, and then Trustee Beal would be second if I supported voting for 2. I don't feel a strong necessity to vote for all incumbents.
I don't have any information outside of, I do know Joe, and I know we put Jody Muirhead in, and I would be happy to push those 2 forward, as well as Frank. I was honestly thinking, and actually having read through the, I don't know, what do you call these, like candidate
Applications?
statements?
Yeah, yeah.
One of them had some grammatical and some serious errors, which to me is on a resume is not something you want to see. So that was definitely off the table. I don't want to call names, but I would be happy giving Melissa a shot over Cynthia Chang. But again, I do not know how qualified they are. I don't know how entrenched they already are in the processes and all the different committees and subcommittees they have.
So can I say, I think it's worthwhile in this kind of election. Santa Clara County is very diverse. And so one thing that I look at is geographic diversity. So like I say, Cynthia is the only delegate from over in Southwest Santa Clara Valley. So, to not select her, I think she provides good representation for that area. And I also think, I don't want to be black and white about this, but I think ethnic diversity helps too. So Cynthia Chang brings an ethnic diversity that is not real strong in CSBA. So, I think Cynthia, and she's like a CPA or something. I mean, she's very good head on her shoulders. She, real good at looking at the budget of, of the organization.
I move that we support Joe Missioner, Frank Beal, and Cynthia Chang,
Of what?
those three candidates.
Which three?
Joe Missioner, Frank Beal, and Cynthia Chang.
No, Jody.
I can't-
Everybody but Jody.
You know, and I'll say to you, in a videotaped meeting, I think it's good for our our board to support the president of Santa Clara County School Boards Association. So, and I will say she's a strong member. So I'll go back to and say that I recommend that we vote for the four incumbents who also are four strong candidates.
Is that a competing motion, Ellen?
First,
Yes.
Mine doesn't have a second, so it's not.
Oh, okay, okay, I'm sorry. Thank you for the guidance on the process.
So I move that we vote to approve the four incumbents who are Frank Beal, Cynthia Chang, Joe Mitchner, and Jody Muirhead.
I second them. Go ahead, trustee Gutierrez. Okay, any further comment before we take a vote? Okay, on a motion made by trustee Wheeler and seconded by trustee Gutierrez to approve the four incumbents, which are Frank Beal, Cynthia Chang, Joe Mitchner, and Jody Muirhead. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions?
No, aye.
Okay. Thank you. So on a motion made by trustee Wheeler and seconded by trustee Gutierrez, the board voted unanimously to recommend, I don't know what verb we need to use, but to put forward the four incumbent delegates on the assembly ballot for CSBA for Santa Clara County. So thank you. So now we're moving on to the review and discussion portion of the meeting. And the next item is a mathematics update.
Tonight to give you an overview of the mathematics program. So some history in terms of math. California adopted new standards back in August of 2010. And the standards were a big change from our old standards. They really focused on three principles focused. And interesting, in 2010, when the standards were first adopted, they actually were not the straight Common Core standards, they included California. Standards definitely have a very difference. The old standards were what we call a metal light, and there were a lot of math standards, and it took a lot to cover them in each grade level. The new standards, they simple standards in each grade level so that teachers could dive deeper into content. I think the biggest change with the new standards is the addition of the 8th grade. The old standards, you had 6th grade math, pre-algebra and algebra. The new standard, you have 6th grade math, 7th grade math, 8th grade math, and then you get number 1. The 8th grade course was created out of taking half of the old algebra 1 standards and dropping them down into the 8th. So then in 2003, the state adopted the math framework and actually dropped the California specific standards and just added the Common Core standards. And the framework really is a way of helping districts implement the new standards, and it also provides the direction of how the districts. Some programming history. In 2013, when the framework was adopted, one of the first things we did was work with Los Altos and the high school to develop our math pathways for the high school. It was a collaborative effort. We knew with the addition of the 8th grade math and the change to Algebra 1, we needed to have consistent pathways for our feeder districts going into the high school. And that was almost a year-long still have the same pathways that we designed back in 2013, 14. And during that time, we also added a middle school math coach. 14, 15, we took on curriculum adoption, did adopt Eureka Math for grades K to 8, including for our algebra and our geometry courses. And then in 2015, 16, the straw went through the same process. And they were not a process, part of the original process, they were going through the whole transition to separate schools. So we gave them, the teachers were so involved in that, they weren't enough to be involved in that. So we gave them a year off. So they then went through the process. They actually got down to the same programs that the other communities did, Eureka Math and GoMath. They adopted GoMath primarily. GoMath was translated into Spanish. Eureka Math was not. And that was big for our teachers trying to teach, not having to simultaneously translate while they're teaching math, like they would have had to do with Eureka Math. And we talked about 2 periods of math. We've had 2 periods of math for several years, and then now with the approval of the new middle school schedule, you'll see that we revised our pathways for implementation for middle school math. A little bit about professional development. We've provided, there's been a focus on mathematics professional development, especially for elementary teachers who, I say this all the time, have to be experts in everything. And it's not easy to be an expert in everything. So our professional development really focused on our elementary staff and helping them understand the importance of the progression of math from kindergarten through 5th grade, how those standards are so critical to success, especially in health club. So again, this is just a little information about Eureka Math. And somehow the math dropped off the slide. I apologize, but Eureka Math is our program for elementary, and GoMath for the straw. And then just a little bit additional, we have 2 programs we use to supplement our elementary program. ST Math, Spatial Temporal Math, which we've had for several years. It's a visual program. It's very research-based. It helps students understand mathematical concepts in which no words. It's all done visually. And then we most recently started using Zern, which is aligned directly to Eureka Math. So students can go in and rewatch lessons and get extra practice, and it all lines up with the volumes that the teachers are teaching. So it allows them to do some more small group instruction and differentiation. And we do have instructional coaches to support math and all concepts in our elementary school. So again, Eureka Math is our middle school program, 6 through 8, algebra 1 and geometry. And really, as you know, middle school is where math instruction shifts. So this is where we offer pathways for students. Students are placed in those pathways based on data. We use data from state assessments like CAS, we use data from that we have. And with our pathways, all of our students have the opportunity to adjust, moving to a more challenging pathway or moving to a course more suited for them at the end, and that's all based on data as well. We do, again, continue to have our math coach, who's invaluable to our math department. And I think one of the things that's most exciting is the team collaboration we have with coaches get together every month. We meet to talk about issues with math. We make sure that what we're teaching aligns with what's happening in the high school. We make sure we're not duplicating efforts. We do have a common exam for Algebra 1, and we're working on a common exam for Geometry so that we can measure the growth of our students and the achievement of our students in the same way. So as I mentioned, our pathways are flexible. This is just a graphic so you can see the different assessments that we use at the end of each year to determine placement for the following. These are our current pathways. Every student is scheduled 2 periods of math or content support. This again was done to address gaps. It was supposed to be a year program. It ended up being 4, and we're working our way to changing that. You can see in 6th grade, taking sixth grade math. After sixth grade, they either accelerate to a track or a pathway where they're going to finish algebra 1 in eighth grade, or they stay on a grade level track in seventh grade. And then we do have students that start sixth grade in our pathway to geometry. And remembering that our pathway to geometry means students are going through 5 years of content in 3 years. So with the new schedule, we're lucky in some ways because we got an opportunity to share a lot of feedback about our pathway from our staff, from our students, from our parents. And so using that feedback, we looked at the thought exchange results which were shared with you when we talked about the middle school schedule. Our students overwhelmingly talked about one period of math. And our parents were split. Some thought 1 period of math was great, others thought 2 periods of math was better. Majority of parents felt that the most important thing to them was that we kept our accelerated pathway. We have options in math. We held some meetings this January, and we looked at our pathways to decide how we wanted to make changes going into next year. We also looked at the pathways of our surrounding districts, just to confirm that no changes had been made, and all of the surrounding districts offer 3 pathways. They all have pathways to geometry and algebra 1. So there's the big changes for 18-19. And I think what you'll see is the biggest change is sixth grade. And I think this is really exciting, and the teachers are very excited about this. In sixth grade now, all of our students are going to enter into a pathway that could take them to be in algebra 1 in eighth grade. So all of our students will essentially enter an accelerated pathway in sixth grade. We have high expectations for our students. We want our students to enter high school and be proficient in algebra. And so that's where they're going to start. We're going to continue to have our 6.2 pathway, which is our pathway to geometry. But then after sixth grade, you can see that we have flexibility. If students can stay in the algebra 1 pathway, but there's also some flexibility if maybe they need to become a grade level. We want our students to finish algebra 1. And with the new schedule, our students in our grade level and our algebra pathways are going to have 1 period of math. This was a big discussion with our math department. The teachers feel like it's appropriate if the content is covered. But because of our new schedule, the students in our 0.1 and 0.0 pathways have the opportunity for a response to instruction course, so they can get additional math. But instead of it being 2 periods of content, it'll be content and then a period to fill the gap. So what we find for some of our students is it's not that they can't, it's not the content itself, they're missing some foundational skills that allow them to be successful with content. So our goal with the response to intervention block is to fill those gaps so they can be successful in the pathway that they're in. 1920 stays the same. You can see that 8.1 period, we're offering 2 periods, and our feeling is it's going to take us a couple years to backwards pace the algebra 1 pathway to make sure that we're not doing too much content in 1. And our main goal is to make sure that our students leaving eighth grade in algebra, who are in that pathway are proficient in algebra. We want that to be a strong foundation for them. So we're keeping that 2 period as we backwards change our pacing. And then 2021, the big changes are 0.0 and 0.1 pathways will be 1 period, our 0.2 pathways will still be 2. Although one of the things we'll be looking at next year is our pacing in our 0.2 pathways. We'd like to look at how we can repace those courses. Right now, in eighth grade, students finish algebra and do geometry, and what we'd really like is for students to have closer to a full year of algebra and a full year of geometry. So we're going to be looking at pacing and periods, how we're doing our pacing. But for now, we felt like for 5 years of math and 3 for 2 periods. These are just highlights. I think I talked to all of these in our slides. So just some things to consider. Again, we really need to focus on that professional development for teachers at all levels, but especially our elementary teachers. We really want to provide that strong foundation in math as our students move to middle school. So gonna be an adjustment period. New middle school schedule, new middle school pathways, it's gonna take some time as we get through and we work on the pacing to make sure that we have the courses spaced out correctly and it all works. We do have a school in Mistral that is using a different curriculum. There is an adjustment for students transitioning. So math and Greek math are very different, so we need to figure out how we can eat that transition. And then the cycle starts over again. So in 2020, and we finish social studies and science, and we're gonna get math again. So we're gonna start all over again, and we'll have an option to re-adopt, or we have the option not to. The next step, and again, professional development. I think the second bullet is one of the things I'm most excited about. Dr. Rudolph and I have had a lot of conversations again about the need for support in our elementary schools, and we are going to hire an elementary coach in math for our elementary schools this coming year. And the goal is that that coach is going to really work on providing and developing professional development, training our elementary coaches, creating modules of training, and then starting to work with our teachers. So it's very exciting. And then we'll be looking at supplemental intervention materials for those response to instruction math classes. And then again, we want to continue that work with the high school district in Los Altos. It's very important that our students have the same experiences going into the high school. And then we're also considering writing a district math policy. Currently, a math policy is required for high schools, high school districts and unified districts. It's not required for K-8, but Ms. Fitzgerald and I have been talking about the need for having a more delineated and transparent policy, and that's something that we're going to do in the fall.
Thank you, Ms. Bauer. Any clarifying questions, trustees? Mr. Calderon.
I do. Have one. Ms. Bauer, could you just help me understand a little bit better when 6.2 and 7.2 and 8.2 through 6 years worth of classroom time, you said they cover 5 years of material. Right. So what are those? I couldn't see which 5 years those 5 are from the chart. Yeah, like what are the 5 math classes that are covered? Okay. 6th, 7th, 8th, algebra 1 and geometry. Okay. Thanks.
Any members of the public wishing to? Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's all right. Can you all hear me?
No,
No?
not so good.
Hello?
You want to share with Ms. Wheeler?
So I have a quick question. So
Trustee
for
Gutierrez.
For the policy, thank you. For the policy, is that something that just the team here will delve into, or will you all also be obtaining and asking for help from the teachers themselves and members of the community, or how do you envision that playing itself out? Thank you.
I actually had one clarifying question as well. If Ms. Strahl were to shift from Go Math to Eureka Math, would the time for that to happen be in 2020 when it's up for when the math program is up for adoption again, or? Thank you. So now, members of the public, would anybody like to make any comments about the math program? Okay, any addition, Ms. Wheeler?
Yeah, so it was in my board update last time, but I guess it's not in the minutes yet, of course. So I want to comment here that I attended a math night. I think it was the first ever math night at Mountain View High School for incoming 9th grade parents. And of course, some parents who were younger than that attended as well. Anyway, it was wonderful to hear on a high school stage the superintendent of curriculum explaining the same thing that you were talking about, and also saying that she is working with you and your counterpart in Los Altos, and it's, it's all a cohesive system. And then you said again tonight, all three districts work together. And my comment is, I think even though that is happening, a lot of people don't know it. So if I could recommend to you, and I don't know how it would be done, but try to find opportunities to publicize that collaboration more frequently. I think would help, our nervous parents feel a little better about it.
And I would just like to add that for many years, there was not this collaboration. When my kids were transitioning, that was a brand new idea. So I'm really glad that it's become part of it's been institutionalized and continued.
Similar to what's going on with the English language learners, how the committee last year had said and suggested, hey, there's these websites that you can tap into to post information of what this all means. What's the reclassification process? What's step A through D? And what does that mean for you as a parent? How can you participate in the educational experience of your child? Perhaps once that's been implemented on the system, this might also be an idea to put on the website, right? And to publicize that way so that then you have something there constantly 24/7 explaining the process of interaction between the school districts and the processes involved and the ideas that are exchanged so that that information is publicly made available a lot sooner and in a manner that's more effective perhaps. Because I know sometimes, although I like to think that we have a large fan base out there, I don't think that there's thousands of people watching this meeting right now, right? So they wouldn't know, but it's just an idea. And I don't mean to micromanage, but I'm just trying to help out. So.
I just had one other question, and those of you with younger children may know the answer, but the Zern and the ST Math online programs, are those also available at home or are they just
Yes.
wonderful? Thank you.
Lucas
That's great.
loves it. Yeah.
That's
Which
great.
one?
ST Math.
Yeah.
We haven't used
The
it.
Penguin?
but- Yeah, the Penguin, and it's it's
DG.
really cool because I think it's got a 10 or 12 key password, but it's still all visual. So he's like, he hits the little pizza. I don't know. He loves ST Math.
So either goes up or he goes down.
Okay.
Okay, there
Thank you
go.
for the update, Kathy. I know
I can
this
give
is a
you a
lot of
demo
information, and to condense it like this is extremely helpful for newbies like me. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, can you please,
Venga acá al frente, por favor.
sí, y después cumplir una carta.
Sí, por favor. Si gusta puede hablar en español y yo lo puedo traducir, o si gusta echarle en inglés, muy bien.
Okay.
Okay, my question is I've been in the district for so many years, and I know when the kids go to high school, they struggle with math. And my question is, I will focus more in the elementary because so many kids, they don't have the base, division and low, and they have like something in the middle last. And when the kids go to high school, they don't have the basis. And I told the principal at Grant, it's hard when the kids come so behind, you catch in 3 years. So I always say they need to be focused more in elementary, the basic, because so many kids, they don't have the base. Do you have any plan for the kids, how to identify the kids are behind? Because some kids, they are very good at math, and some kids, they start getting behind. Did the teacher have any plan for that kids?
Thank you. And will you please fill out a card? There's a yellow card. I think they're on the table.
Tell us your name.
Yes.
My name is Maribel Barajas.
Thank you, Ms. Barajas.
the past, we've been focused on content. Now we're going to be focused on filling the gap. So what's happening right now is actually our math teacher and our math department are previewing programs in this year that have assessment at the beginning to find out where the gaps are, and then curriculum to fill them gap. So that's where we are right now.
Can I ask another question? So to Ms. Barajas' point, when students move from elementary school to middle school, and their fifth grade teacher knows that those students have some gaps and they want the sixth grade teachers to help those students, is there some sort of notation in their records that helps identify the students that need more help so that there will be this warm handoff to be able to help those kids right away?
Working on this spring, how to do that handoff. We are offering. So we are working on the process to make it cleaner. And in the past, we've used data, so they have we have task force, and so the middle schools have all the data to look at. I think that we're looking at something a little more structured so that the middle schools understand, hey, the students need to be
So I guess what you're, I'm sorry. I guess what you're saying then is the approach for this evolution of the mathematic program and implementation of how we want to teach is twofold, right? You've got the elementary approach, which you're working on right now, where you plan to hire a coach. That coach will then be an effective leader in all schools of elementary level. At that point, they'll be working with all teachers with professional development in terms of teaching math. And after that, once they make the transition, the students to middle school, you have a separate process for being able, I don't want to say track, but it sounds like it to me, right? The different abilities of students in either O, 1, or 2. But if the child is still behind, RTI then will be used to effectively try and help those students catch up. So I guess my question is, if the student's poor in math, for example, and when they make the transition from elementary to middle school, would they be automatically placed in O, or is there something else? Or 1?
They'll all be placed on pathways to algebra 1. Our real goal is to fill those gaps in that year. On that.
So if they're behind from middle school, I'm sorry, elementary in 5th, and they make the leap to middle school, you're saying that RTI is going to be the option to be able to have them then catch up so they can be competitive in 7th. That's the goal. Okay. So hopefully there's also a backup plan in case they don't make it.
So they'll continue to get response to I think while we don't want to move kids into a grade level math, we don't want to move them out of 0.0, we do have that.
Okay.
We'd rather keep them with high expectations and provide that.
Sure. No, I hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, trustees? Dr. Clark, I think you're on again for the review and discussion of the 2018-19 budget adoption and the draft assumptions for review.
Very much. So I am here tonight to start the 2018 budget process. One of the first things that we do is do some draft assumptions for board input. We'll be here tonight to present and discuss, and then at the March 15th board meeting, along with the 2017-18 budget report, we'll also bring the 2018-19 for action. One of the first things on this, I'll just go through the list that we have there just to review the process that you have all.
And Dr. Clark, to the extent you can yank the, no, the microphone, because we're getting emails from people trying to watch online. That'd be great. Thank you.
So, like a rock star.
Yeah.
All right, just as a review, the 2018-19, this is the beginning of the 2018-19 budget adoption process. So on on the slide, January, the governor released his proposed 2018-19 state budget. Tonight, March 1st board meeting will review the assumptions that will be used to build that budget. March 15th, that board meeting will approve those assumptions. Board will ask the board to take action. And then during that March to April timeline, internally, Director Liu and her staff and I and the superintendent and departments and school sites will be working internally to develop that budget. May 17th, that board meeting will bring back the governor's main revision to the 18-19 proposed budget. We'll finalize any changes at that time that might have an impact. Some of those things only changes will be at that time will be the items that will be material changes, because we have a very fast turnaround this year given the last two board meetings of the year. May 31st board meeting is a public hearing on the budget adoption and the EPA, the Education Protection Act, and also the LCAP. And then on June 14th is the actual board action night. So it'll be very fast between the governor's May revise and for us to move forward. So some draft assumptions for us is where we're starting. So some of the core assumptions, the enrollment in EDA, this is kind of where we are now. We'll update this as we go through the process of where we are currently in the 17-18 school year, and then what our projected enrollment is for the 2018-19, 19-20, and 2020-21 school year. ADA is the average daily attendance. We run about 96, 97%, somewhere in that number, depending on where you are in which year. So those will fluctuate as we go between today and budget adoption in June. COLA, which is the cost of living adjustment, comes from the state. Those are numbers coming from the state and also school services in California. And you always see those numbers too, essentially about 2.5% for the next couple of years, and then it jumps up to 8% in the third year. Assessed valuation growth, that is the property tax assessment or property assessment valuation growth in Mountain View. What we're projecting for 18-19, the first year is only 5% growth over the prior year. And then for the next 2 years, 19-20, 20-21, years 2 and 3 of the overall multi-year projection, we're down to 3%. We just got today the latest update from the county assessor's office. So as of the March report, growth for this prior year is 2.4%. So it's a little low. It's about a full percentage point of where we were this time last year, and about 3 percentage points below where we were 2 years ago. So regardless of the construction and the development going on in Mountain View, for AV growth, assessed valuation growth, we may be starting to slow. However, Director Liu and I were looking at this chart today, and if you look at where we were at this month over the last 3 years and where we ended up at the prior year, so we are probably still in good shape, but we won't know until they actually come in. So the next couple of months, we'll update this as we go through. Benefits growth, essentially 5% cost increase over the next 3 years. PERS and STRS. PERS is the state retirement, the public employees retirement system. PERS is the state teacher retirement system. Those percentages are, one's in statute and one takes action for the PERS board to come to for those percentage increases. So those have been planned out for ever since the increases have come out with the state pension retirement system. The increases we have, we've been planning for those numbers. We've been planning essentially for 19-20, 20-21 to both be around 20%, and well, there they are. Routine maintenance for us is 3% is required. 3% of the overall general fund expenditures are required by the state for us to, as a school district, make sure that we have money to upkeep and our facilities that we currently have. We actually, as a school district, use 5%. That pays for all the staff, maintenance, groundkeepers, custodians, and then just to upkeep our facilities itself. So we spend about 5% of our overall expenditures in general fund. Strategic plan initiatives, this has not changed from last year's budget adoption. We had planned to spend $100,000 in the 18-19 school year, but you'll see 19-20, 20-21. Right now, there isn't any additional funds planned for those 2 years regarding the strategic plan. Though we do know in 19-20, in 2020, 2021, that third year, it will be time to start to look at strategic plan 2021's new 2026 plan. So they're somewhere in the course of the 18-19 school year, we'll probably start looking at putting money aside in that third year so we can plan for
going on. The site turnaround money, which we currently be using at Castro and Dericoff for recent years. The 18-19 school year is the final year. This current 17-18 school year is the last year for Castro to receive $100,000 of turnaround funds. The 18-19 school year is Dericoff's third year. They were a year apart. Just to remind the community and also the board that Title I funding still continues at both Castro and Dericoff schools. They're about $150,000 each. Working with Director Smith and the total Title I funding that we'll get for the state, those numbers might increase depending on the overall necessary expenditures from the district regarding the Title I expenditures. McKinney-Vento was one of those examples as well, which pays for our homeless program and the services that we're able to provide as a district. We take it out of the Title I funds that we get from the Fed. Curriculum adoption, Mrs. Bauer brought that up already. We talked about history, social science in the first year for $500,000, health in the second year, and then science, the new textbook or new curriculum adoption in that third year, roughly $1 million. Of course, those are all big numbers, almost a placeholder for us until we decide, until the district and the state takes action on the actual curriculum materials, we won't know what the actual cost is. SIOP continuing on, those numbers, $140,000 in the first year, $130,000 in the second, and then $80,000 in the third. The K-5 expanding language through science program. This is our summer program that we'll be running with our summer school program, and those are $100,000 for each of the 3 years of summer school. Next is something that we're adding as part of the strategic plan. This is new for us in the 18-19 school year, looking at an expanded after-school program. The idea that we're able to provide those after-school programs at all sites, regardless of the economic status of the students at that school and in the community itself. For right now, it's a placeholder, $300,000 at each school site, or $300,000 each year to cover those expanded programs at the school sites. As we get more planning this spring for the 18-19 school year, those numbers will get a little more fine-tuned. Slater opening, we've been planning for that opening in the 19-20 school year for last 2 years. In the 18-19 school year, we have, as it's outlined there, the plan is to have that total expense for the 18-19 school year includes a principal who will be hired for the full year. That principal will be on special assignment to do some projects, and then also part of it is all the work that you do in advance to open the school. The plan is also to hire a school secretary 6 months in advance. That secretary and the principal would come to work together to start to build that relationship, that working relationship, not to mention all the things that would need to take place to get that school ready. And then to go ahead and hire the custodians 3 months before school starts, or 3 months before the school year ends, where the custodians for their Slater campus would be working in April, May, June. So they'll be part of the 18-19 budget. They can come in, they can get trained at a school site. By then, so the school's completely open. We'll have custodians on staff who know the campus, know what's going on, when all the furniture and all the goods and supplies and materials that are being delivered, they can help unpack and set up that campus. And in the following year, the 19-20 school year, that's when all the other staff begin. This does not include classroom teachers. The idea that the number of students we have, teachers will be moving from other schools, so they're already in the budget. These are the additional staff at a school site, the RTI instructor, the school community engagement facilitator, the office clerk, positions that we have at all the elementary schools that won't start until the actual 19-20 school year. And then in the 2020 school year, we're completely up and running. Everyone is fully staffed and just goes on. The board has taken action to, or at least direction and taken action to change the middle school schedule. We anticipate both middle schools, Scranton and Graham, changing the middle school schedule. Right now it's a placeholder, potential of 6 additional staff. And so you see the cost for those 3 years, and of course that would be ongoing. And as Mrs. Bauer made a comment, we're adding both the elementary coach in math and the elementary coach in science. And those are the numbers for those 3 years. And then as we're not sure with student growth or teacher growth in the district, as our enrollment continue to grow between now and summer, we may have to add additional staff, additional teachers. So it's better for us to put it in the budget and plan. And then when we get to first interim of the 18-19 school year, we can remove that teacher growth contingency if we don't need it to have it in the budget so we're planning for it. So those are mostly some core assumptions and then impact expenditures. For revenues for us going on, we have Measure B parcel tax, which voters approved. We approximately, it's $2.9 million each year ongoing until it expires. And then what the board took action this last fall, the idea to transfer any excess revenue in Fund 40 to Fund 1. And you see those projections over the next few years. And based on our current lease agreements with Google at Slater and the preschool at Therakop, and then also with the German school, and the expenses that we have, those numbers will continue to grow past the 2021 school year. So for us, next steps, I kind of beat this for us a couple times. Tonight, we've reviewed draft assumptions. March 15th, we'll ask the board to take action. May 17th, we'll come back. May 31st, we'll be looking at the public hearing for the board for the budget adoption for 18-19, and then June 14th, the board takes action. Questions? Input?
Trustees, any clarifying questions? Members of the public, any comments on this item? Additional questions or comments, trustees? Trustee Caldonado.
Thank you. Dr. Clark, what sort of input would you ideally seek from the board at this juncture? Just seeking input on the agenda. What kind of input would be the most helpful for us to give?
That you looked at all the assumptions and agreed with what we are putting out on March 1st. So we can continue working towards the action on March 1st. And then the other side of that is if you see something on here that says, nope, you guys are so far off, that can't be right at all. So we need to change. For example, if we think that we need 10 new teachers in the school district, not 3 next school year because of growth, that would be something. I'm not asking, as staff, not asking for the board to rubber stamp these assumptions, of course, but for us to see if good, if it's down, get questions about how we came to these assumptions, or if there's something that we missed, something that we needed for sure to add in. It'd be much better for us if we're building the 18-19 budget if there's an expenditure out there that we missed. I don't want it to hit us in all of 18 all of a sudden as a
I had one that raised my eyebrow, which was the new, the site where Slater is, the new elementary school, the 464,000 for all other staff. And you mentioned an RTI instructor, a SCEF, and an office clerk. That doesn't add up to 464,000. I'm wondering, are there other, because the principal is already in there, the secretary is already in there, custodian's already in there.
I'm going through this. The clerk, the RTI, the SCEF, the instructional coach.
Night custodian.
The custodians are already there.
You have one. Is that both of them?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're both there. Given the fact that our certificate have an average teacher salary and compensation total comp, add a couple of, it's up to that number.
But the certificated people are not going to, I know when Slater was closed, you still have the same number of kids in the district. So theoretically, the amount of teachers that we already have on staff would just be reallocated. So that 464 should only be for, unique staff to a school site.
The RTI teacher is a professional coach, clerk in the office. I feel like I'm missing one more role. I feel like there's 5 in that. Not the
Okay.
classroom teachers.
That would just be one that you asked numbers that looked
So I
high.
think when we
That,
get back on March 15th, I can fill that out.
thank you.
And we can see where those numbers.
Thank you.
Dr. Clark, I don't remember in last year's budget assumptions, do we have a teacher growth contingency then as well? In last year's?
I think I wanted it there, and I feel at one point
It didn't fit?
and then I think we ended up putting it back.
Oh, yeah.
At that time, we also were bracing for
That was
not
pre-parcel
passing a
tax.
Pre-parcel tax, and so
So we were going to go
we
without
started
that.
removing items from, like, for instance, strategic plan was reduced down,
Mhm.
and then we took off a bunch of items. I even think we even looked at deferred maintenance and reduce that to its bare minimum to brace for a $2.6 million deficit.
All right. Dr. Clark, we have a contingency for 3 new teachers. It's 3, not 3 in 2018, 3 in 2019, and 3 in 2020, right? It's 3 that, not 3 more. It's not higher 3. Oh, it's higher 3 more, higher 3 more, 9 at the end.
As the building in Mountain View and what the projections that we've seen, at some point we will have more and more kids coming. So we're planning for the current enrollment that we have, and then projected working with Ms. Geisels and her staff about how many kids we're actually going to have in our school district. We have that enrollment, which tells us how many teachers we're going to have. But over the summer, if we have a group of people move in, we have to hire more teachers to address those new kids. So the idea is each year, there's another 3 teachers built into the budget. So yes, it's cumulative. That's 900,000 in the third year.
Would it be consistent to then also have some of those students included in the in the average daily attendance number that you had on the prior slide? Is that was the same for all 3 years?
Good, except that we don't know. And so much of our funding from the state comes based on your average daily attendance. Even though we are not a revenue limited state-funded school district or a community-funded school district, there are some allocations. For example, the one-time discretionary money that's coming from the state, about $250 per student, but it's per ADA. So when we're starting to look at overall revenue coming to the district in those types of categories, you want to make sure you use an ADA. For us, actually, Director Lou and I had this conversation today. You always lowball your revenues and your expenditures are higher than you anticipated.
I thought you were doing that. Okay, that's fine.
I had another question, which is whether there will be a need to provide some continued extra support for Castro and Therakoff. I know that the original allocation was for 3 years, and we've come to the end of that horizon. I just asked the question.
I asked that last year.
So we are going to continue Title I funding, which is about $150,000. And then the district will absorb the other costs. So for instance, at Castro, they spend somewhere in the neighborhood of about $100,000 for summer school program, but they run their summer school program separate than ours. And so we are going to absorb that cost so that they don't have to incur it anymore. And so that's where so the 150 we feel pretty confident is right around all of the other services and programs that they use. But once you take out summer school, we should be pretty good.
So the Title I funds should be sufficient.
Yeah. When the turnaround funding started, Castro actually wasn't receiving Title I funds. And so that's pretty substantial. And then again, as Dr. Clark mentioned, it's possible that we will see an increase in Title I funding, which will also help. I think right now we're sort of projecting somewhere in the neighborhood of closer to 400,000, which would bring it up to 200, which would be about $50,000 less. But we won't know what the Title I funding is until later this year in the fall, which is when they release. They will send out their projections, and then once the federal government does their budget, which we all know, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And then in the fall, right around end of September, October, they actually release the funds.
Thank you. Trustee Gutierrez?
I have a question, and it might go straight to Dr. Rudolph. But I think we had a conversation about the pain of PK. And I know that they were being sponsored with funding that was coming outside of the district. Do we have any update on that and whether or not we're going to absorb that as well once that funding runs out, or what's the status?
Yeah, so we actually, the grant is coming to an end. And what we have determined is that it actually is easier for us to pay for it outright as a district cost, as opposed to using the grant funds, because there's a lot more meetings, there's a lot more compliance. We ran into a couple issues in terms of staffing, like what staff can do at any given point in time. A lot more reports are being generated. And so in talking with Ms. Smith, we all determined that we can cover the cost for the PK, and it would make more sense and we can expand it even further, as opposed to, currently our SLS funding requires it to be only at specific sites, and we don't have to do it just at those sites if we pay for it ourselves.
Thank you. So when will we know if we're absorbing the cost?
I'm looking over at Ms. Smith right now. I believe that's the goal, and I think it's actually accounted for in the budget assumptions.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I wanted, yeah. Okay. Just to make it public, that's all. Thank you.
Anything else, trustees? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Clark.
I just want to point out that we also will be bringing back the board goals for adoption, and that's also what influenced some of the budget assumptions. So we looked at what the strategic plan goals were, as well as what the board goals were, and then move forward. So, for instance, one of the goals is about science and math. If after developing a plan of action for science and math in the coming year, the 1920 school year, that we have action steps, it will be reflected in the budget as an outcome of the goal that the board has set. So I just want to point that one out.
So that's not in that chart yet,
No,
but you think it will be added?
So the costs for determining or developing the plan will be assumed in the strategic plan cost. And then the cost for implementing the plan
Will show
show
up a
up.
year from now.
Yes.
But there weren't any strategic plan costs for this year, as I recall, just now.
So there's $100,000 that is left over for any new initiatives that are coming on, but almost all of our big initiatives have already moved forward, and so are now considered as part of our ordinary day-to-day operations. So, for instance, RTI is a day-to-day operation now. So we don't need to use strategic plan funding to pilot or to test it or to look at it. And so the same thing will go once which actually is why RTI was pulled off. So once you start seeing a new program come on, we'll show this is what it's going to cost to do it. And then after that, it just becomes a normal operating expense.
I think I was confused because it does show 100,000 for next year. It was years 2 and 3.
Yes, so that's what we're going to use for things like developing the goals. I believe there's Mistral that will be part of it, because that's a dual immersion. There's the science one, and I'm trying to think of what the other goals that we had.
We had 3, right?
There were 3, but I can't remember. I'll make sure I have them. But when we do the budget assumptions, we will bring back the official goals from the board retreat too.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. Board members, does anybody have any updates? I emailed mine already to Ms. Lilga. Okay, so nothing to report this evening? Any items for future agendas? We talked something about perhaps a safety update on the, pardon? Oh, you, okay, okay, good. All right, thank you. Well, yeah, we talked about perhaps just reviewing what we do for safety in light of Parkland, and yeah, just the, okay.
What we can do is next week, during our one-on-one, we can look at what the schedule and find a date for it.
Thank you. Okay. At 9:24, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.